this meeting of the Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee to order. Didn't bring a gavel, so I'll use the pen. I'd like to ask, first I'd note that Councilmember Rue and myself are present, and we are expecting my colleague, Mr. Harris-Dawson, shortly. I'm going to start by asking that we approve item 4 and 7 on consent without objection. Sure. So that's good. So those two items are approved. And now let's start with item number 1.
Item number 1, Personnel Department and Innovation and Performance Commission reports relative to the creation of a learning and career development strategy for city employees, proposed contract with Cornerstone on Demand for an integrated human resources system, and related matters.
Morning, council members. Raylan Napper, Personnel Department.
Michael Gold with the Personnel Department.
I'll be brief. I hope everyone's feeling a little more confident that this is the right thing at the right time for the city, and we're prepared to answer any remaining questions you may have.
I wonder if you could give us a short overview of the proposed learning and development program with Cornerstone.
Okay, Cornerstone would be providing 4 modules. One is that complement our entire learning and development and employee development program. The first is the learning management system. We currently have one, and we would be replacing it with Cornerstone. And then there's performance appraisal to replace paper and pencil, and also be configured to however departments would like to have an appraisal program. And onboarding for new hires and going more paperless there, and having a more robust onboarding system for new hires. And then finally, succession planning, and that would kind of, again, enhance our succession planning efforts and kind of take it to the next level and provide opportunities for innovation in various HR functions. And then also it's an integrated system, so everything talks with each other, and also we'll be able to integrate with any other systems we have that it needs to talk to.
And how will the benefits be measured and assessed so we can determine whether this program should continue past year 3?
Learning management, obviously by usage, I think, and that will also depend on the content we load into it. Our learning management system and online training has proved very successful thus far. We reach thousands of employees where we used to reach hundreds, and onboarding will be department by department, and again, the usage and the extent to which we reduce time and paper, and performance appraisal, again, usage, and do you have any other thoughts on that one?
No.
Okay.
Has this been done, a similar career development program in other large cities, and if so, what kind of results have they gotten?
Yes. I mean, any large agency, any agency that cares about the development of their employees has these types of modules. And it's really a talent management suite, and it allows us to leverage our very small staff, and a number of public agencies use it and use this. This is really the best of breed of what's out there.
So any examples, though, from other cities of their success?
The state of North Carolina uses it. The state of Nebraska uses it. The state of California, I think the Tax Franchise Board uses it. There's also lots of big Fortune 500 companies that use it as well.
Okay, Mr. Rue, any other questions?
Yes. I'm very encouraged by this, and I know I had lots of talks with the various department heads, including the personnel, with Wendy. And we definitely need continuing education, capacity building, knowledge transfer within our city employees. So I'm very happy about this. I mean, I got to admit, I'm not a big fan of online learning, but it is a lot better. I mean, I'm doing the reason I don't like online learning is I don't think you learn that much, but I am doing my ethics training on the city, and it's pretty good. Yeah, I know. I did half of it. Yes. So the only question I had was, is it purely online, or is there any kind of live component, or do you plan to have a mixture in the future? Because I know it's a 3-year contract.
Yes, and currently we have some online classroom training. There's a program called Core Supervisory Training. So departments nominate their supervisors and then go through that. It's a 7 module, so 7 half days and 7 weeks that they go through. That's a very robust in-person program. And then we have done and plan to do more executive level in-person training. And then we're also piloting a leadership program in ITA that's in person. And so we're looking for future leadership programs that would be in person.
I think this is a great thing, and I know I spoke with Peter Marks at the chief of the Innovation and Technology with the mayor's office, and he thinks this is a good thing as well. So look forward to how this turns out and the growth of it. Thanks to the CIO as well.
A couple more quick questions. How will this affect the workload of personnel staff? Can you absorb this with an already understaffed department? How will that play out?
I'm proud to say our employee development staff just doubled from 2 to 4. The things we were able to do with 2 people, the technology really helps us leverage the small staff. And we've outgrown our current system, and it's has proved that has been time consuming for staff dealing with different bugs and fixes and things. And so moving to the new one, we envision far fewer of those. And the real only tension will come during implementation, because it'll kind of be an all-in and a lot of work at that point. But employee development is part of a larger division, and so we can absorb any other programs that are going on or needs right then.
And what's the timeline for implementation of the first phase of the project? Since you mentioned it?
Well, by July 1, we plan to have at least 2 modules up and running, probably closer to 3. So.
Very good. Well, I certainly think this has been one of the weak areas for the city, and I'm very excited that we're moving forward with this. So I think Mr. Roux shares my enthusiasm, so I'll ask that we move this item forward without objection. Hearing none, that item is passed. And so we'll approve the contract with Cornerstone, and we will note and file the Innovation and Performance Commission's report. Item number 2.
Item number 2, IPC report relative to proposed employee engagement survey program.
And I'll note for the record that Councilmember Harris Dawson has now joined us.
Again, Raylan Napper, Personnel Department.
And Michael Gold, Personnel Department.
What's before you is an IPC motion and recommendation to support and endorse the Personnel Department's employee engagement program. And it's primarily a measurement of engagement. And again, this is how we've leveraged our small staff, is we develop programs and templates and then offer them to departments like a consultant, and it's more of an opt-in kind of thing. So it's the same, that's how we formatted employee engagement. We go where we're wanted, and the departments that have an interest in their employee engagement and taking efforts to increase it. And so it's as I said, a measurement tool, but then we also have programs and interventions to drive engagement in the areas where they're low or want to focus on.
Okay. I only have one question. So what would the problem be with letting employee organizations look at the engagement questions on the surveys so that we could implement what the IPC has requested, that all departments participate? Because I know there are some that have been more hesitant.
There's no problem with that. We haven't been asked to this point, but there's no problem with that. We could share it.
So if we could ask that you do that, share it with those departments and those employees, and include all departments in that survey.
I'm not sure I follow. You mean actually administer the survey or just preview the questions for those that are interested?
Well, as I understand it, if we don't preview the questions and get agreement, that there are some departments that won't be surveyed and won't be included.
No, again, it's up to the departments who want to do this. We generally, in the few departments where we've done this, we share the questions with the general manager because they want to know what's going out to their employees, and then we administer the survey. I think only when it comes to sworn members, police or fire, where there would need to be some conversations with labor before him.
Okay, so we can have those conversations and attempt to get them involved in this process.
Absolutely. I think labor would be very interested in driving engagement of their employees and seeing that department heads and managers are, taking an interest in trying to make the workplace better.
So as I recall, we weren't including the sworn, and if we can make every effort to do that, I think that would be productive. Mm-hmm. Other questions, members, comments?
Councilmember, if I could just add, I'm sorry, I'm late. Todd Sargent, the president of the Innovation and Performance Commission. In regards to the questions for the survey specifically, we'd like to have the consistent questions asked of all city employees so that we can benchmark results across city departments. So it's really critical that we don't adjust the survey based on the department feedback specific. We can add to that list, but we prefer to have the baseline questions asked of all departments for purposes of analysis.
So as a process, we could go to the departments that right now are not participating, get their feedback, and see if that can be used across the board potentially, correct?
That's correct.
So if we can give that direction to make that attempt, otherwise, note and file the Innovation and Performance Commission's communication. That would be great.
Thank you.
So, any objections? That will pass without objection. Item number 3.
Item number 3, IPC report relative to proposed employee recognition program.
Would you like me to? Great. So the Innovation and Performance Commission, over the course of the last several months with the Personnel Department, has looked at the current services of personnel, and we want to really encourage city employees, and in particular the management, to leverage the programs of the city. One of them is the Employee Recognition Program, which we think, which is already in place today, and our recommendation from the Commission is that all departments are encouraged to use the program, and so we would like the council to take action to encourage departments to leverage the recognition program, which has no cost impact. It's a great program to allow for spot recognition for great performance.
And does the Personnel Department contemplate through the Cornerstone contract of helping to
This is actually a separate program. This is already in place today. We already have it.
Well, I know that it's been around for quite a while. I'm just wondering in terms of the push to advertise it more and get more participation. Does Cornerstone help us in that regard at all? Is it used for that?
It does not, but the council could help us in promoting this as well. We've made some presentations to personnel directors and assistant general managers, but it's really it's a homegrown program. We use the Google Suite and a little programming to make it very simple, very user friendly, and just on demand.
And also, if I can add, the commission also partners with the mayor's office for the Civic Innovation Awards. And the more information we have around homegrown innovations and performance within the city, the sooner we can recognize them on a larger level. So the more that we have utilization of the program across the city family, the faster we can also recognize them at a citywide level.
So what's the appropriate action for us to take on this one? How do we move this forward?
I believe it's a directive to the departments to leverage the program. They may not even know if the program exists. Quite frankly, there's been, obviously we've done some public relations to the department managers at times about it, but we do feel that if there's a strong encouragement from the council to leverage the program to recognize excellence, that would go very far in adoption.
All right, so any comments, questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on this. I think this is a great program. And actually, can you explain a little bit the current recognition program, how it works, and how do you recognize the employees, and a little bit about that?
Do you want to talk about this program in particular first? And I can also talk about the Civic Innovation Award.
Okay.
Yeah, so this program is web-based, and we encourage supervisors who want to recognize their employees to go into the system and recognize one employee by filling out information about some kind of outstanding recent achievements of this employee. They line up with the various mayor's priorities. And then after they fill in the information on this Google form, then they submit it and they can print out a certificate, and then they hand the certificate to the employee. We suggest they do it at a staff meeting so it's in front of other people, but it's really up to the supervisor. We collect all of the data in tables. For each department, we see who's being recognized and what they're being recognized for, and then we feed that information back on an annual basis to all the general managers, who can then choose to recognize the best of those employees if they want to annually.
And then again, it's available citywide should the mayor or council want to see, what's been done and choose to recognize someone of yourself. You can do that as well. The three categories where that we focus on are fiscal responsibility, innovation, and customer service. We feel like that just about anything can fit into those categories.
Additionally, historically, the Quality and Productivity Commission, which is now the Innovation Performance Commission, gave annual Quality and Productivity Awards, which were backward-looking, so great things that have been done historically to improve quality and performance. We rolled that into the Mayor's Civic Innovation Award, which is a spot program. So a department self-nominate individuals who've done great things recently around innovation and performance, and the Mayor's Office, through Mayor's Office of Budget and Innovation, recognizes them in real time.
In real time, or?
Yes, in real time.
So, and how do they, is it?
It varies. There've been press conferences, certifications, but usually it's a program with the mayor that recognizes great work in the departments.
Mr. Chair, in light of the previous recession and all these budget cuts and curtailing back on staff, and the voters and a lot of the city think that a lot of city employees aren't doing their job well and whatnot, when the reality is we have a lot of great city employees doing a tremendous job, doing more than what they're responsible for because of the budget cutbacks. And, in Transportation Committee, Councilman Bonin does a thing every meeting at the beginning where the Transportation General Manager recognizes a few key employees at the start of every committee meeting. And I was wondering if we could possibly, because you were asking for council support and you were asking for some ideas, if we could somehow formalize the recognition to promote the good behavior. I mean, whether it's, I think fiscal responsibility, innovation, and customer service are three great categories. Whether we do it once a month, quarterly, or even every 6 months, I mean, I would even bring them to council. It doesn't have to be an employee. We could even do a division.
Could be.
A department, a division, a team that did something innovative that saved a lot of money, or something like that. So I mean,
I think that's a great idea.
yeah, and we could bring them to
so.
council.
Maybe we can make an attempt to do that on a monthly basis, and let your commission pick the people, and we'll recognize them not only in committee but at council.
One thing we have done, Councilmember, is the Innovation Fund, which I also chair for the city, as we move those items through to council and they're funded and they're put into production, the chair of the ICTCT, did I get that committee acronym correct? Councilmember Blumenfield also has been recognizing those submitters as part of the public recognition process, and so that's been a positive benefit. But we also have over 300 other submissions that have come from city employees that were not funded but were great ideas that we'd like to figure out ways that we can recognize those great ideas that have come through.
I think it's a good idea because we've typically done this very internally.
Yep.
But actually bringing folks to council and recognizing the accomplishments, I think it's a great idea. So
Do you think we could maybe ask them for a report back, and instead of just making it on the fly right now, whether you combine it with the Innovative Awards or do it separately, some sort of formalized process,
Sure.
whether it's monthly, quarterly, in that way it will encourage other departments to want to recognize their employees and whatnot. So, because I mean, I've been meaning to, for example, like actually a block away from my house, it happened several months ago, and I've been meaning to try to recognize the police officers. There was an incident where I guess a couple got into a fight on the street, and he ran and he had a knife. And there was a swarm of LAPD officers, and it ended peacefully. I mean, it could have easily turned to an officer-involved shooting, and it is a heroic deed. I mean, it wasn't on the news, it was on nothing, but I think it's to recognize something like that even promotes our officers and let them know that we know they're risking their lives every day and doing their job.
well, I think it's a great idea. And Councilmember Bonin, with a committee that really deals with one department, appropriately does it in his committee. But I think since this really would deal with the entire city family, I think we could do it where we do it in committee, but then we bring the same individuals to council on the same day. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Let's have a report back, whether we do it quarterly or monthly.
30 days, 60 days?
If you could come back in 30 days, we will pass that item
And
without
if you
objection.
could look at the county, I think they're called the STARS program.
Yes.
They do it, yeah.
Yes.
We talked to them already.
Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Chair, we'll be sending this forward to council with that instruction?
Yeah.
Very good.
But they're coming back though, right?
Well, let's see.
Well,
Yeah, let's hold it in committee
Hold it
for
in committee,
30
very
days and then bring it to council once we've heard it.
okay.
Okay, item 5.
Item 5, motion Koretz-Blumenfield relative to adoption of a formal policy in regard to organized labor being considered the preferred provider in all contractual situations in which it can provide the required expertise and skill in requiring a neutrality agreement for all contractors, vendors, and service providers subject to the city's procurement process and related matters.
All right, so the city of Los Angeles has had obviously a long history of supporting its rights of its employees to organize and collectively bargain. And as the city's evolved, many functions and services that the city does and doesn't perform, but it contracts out, are being handled by outside entities rather than city staff, such as the concessions at LAX, where there's already a labor peace agreement. And as such, the city should ensure that all non-city employees conduct various functions for the city and working at city facilities, that they have an opportunity to consider organizing and to ensure businesses at these locations are conducted in a continuous and harmonious manner. So all contractors should have a neutrality agreement applicable to all contracts on an as-needed basis, similar to the agreements at the Los Angeles World Airports. And the idea for this motion was brought to me after the mayor's office staged a big concert in Grant Park without ensuring that labor would be asked to participate in bidding on work that would be done for putting together the stage at such large events. At such events, I envision labor being given at least an opportunity to bid on such work, and even I'd go so far as saying they should be the preferred provider of such work. This was also an issue when union concerns had not been taken into consideration during the RFP process for the Greek Theater in 2014-2015. This proposal needs some review as to how it will impact the city's procurement processes for services, et cetera. So my recommendation would be to ask the CAO to report back in consultation with the relevant departments such as Public Works and the city attorney as to how to proceed with implementation of the directions of this motion. And I don't know if there's anyone from the CAO's office that's prepared to speak to this.
Sir, Maureen Aspen from the CAO's office. I'm not really prepared to speak on that, but we are certainly willing to, get together with the Board of Public Works and personnel and the city attorney's office and report back on implementation.
Comments from members? Questions?
It's going to report back, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a couple speakers on this. Paul Dorigo, Jerry Levy. Good morning.
So this proposal that you have before you, this motion, when I originally thought about presenting it, it was specifically to protect the labor organizations in the city that we're dealing with a variety of entities owned or operated by the city of Los Angeles. And the key here is, in this particular case, using the Greek Theater as an example, you have labor forces that have been providing services to this facility for over 50 years. And what they've done is the effective job that we've asked them to do with a city venue. That relationship, now that the city essentially has gotten involved and is responsible through a third party to make it work, the labor union, in this case specifically IATSE Local 33, has met with Mike Schul and Reckon Parks and basically said, we will effectively make sure that this venue works for the city as well as for those residents that live in the community and for our members. And remember, in this case, the members that are there essentially have been there for many years, know the Greek inside and out, and will be an adjunct to making this new venue, which is what I'm relating to the Greek, with city management, operate effectively. However, taking this into consideration and looking at the concept of the labor peace agreement, it's basically to accomplish two things: to give labor at least an acknowledgement that something is going to transpire, especially as it relates to a municipally owned property. Now, whether it's something going on at Grant Park, whether it's something going on at the Coliseum, where the city has an investment and an involvement, labor needs to be at least acknowledged. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so if, let's see, those are all our speakers. If there's no objection, we will ask for a report back in consultation with the appropriate departments and the city attorney as to how to implement the direction of this motion.
Will we be holding this in committee pending that report
Yes,
back?
yes, we'd be holding this in committee. Item number 6.
Item number 6, City Attorney Report relative to recommendation regarding implementing Los Angeles Municipal Code Section 53.73 by amending the definition of the term kennel in the city's zoning code and to exclude pet shops.
Deputy City Attorney Charles Sewell for the City Attorney's Office, if you have any questions.
I wonder if you could give us a brief overview of what's been done.
What's been done in regards to legislation or the litigation? There's several components.
Litigation and what's before us.
The litigation that was initiated by Petitioner Phyllis Dougherty challenged basically two different actions: an ordinance, 182816, that the city had passed to amend the definition of kennels in the animal regulations. It was Los Angeles Municipal Code Section 53.00. That definition had basically specified that the definition of kennels excludes pet shops. In regards to the zoning code, there's also a definition of kennel that's very broad, that describes a kennel as any place where 4 or more dogs, 4 months or older, essentially 4 or more adult dogs, are kept. The city tried to rectify that lack of clarity by issuing a zoning administrator's interpretation, which clarified that the zoning code did not intend for the definition of kennels to include pet shops that kept 4 or more adult dogs. Ms. Dougherty challenged both the ordinance and the ZAI. The ordinance amending the animal regulations, 53.00, was upheld. The ZAI was overturned. Though the city didn't necessarily agree with the court's reasoning, we abided by the court's decision and rescinded the ZAI in May of last year. And so the ordinance that amended the animal regulation stands, and we still have the unresolved ambiguity of the definition of kennel in the zoning code. So essentially the report is recommending that planning be directed to come up with an ordinance that would redefine kennel in the zoning code. That's one way that this issue could be addressed legislatively.
Now, my understanding is that part of the litigation that we lost initially was about public participation. So will this create an opportunity for public participation and chance for the public
We
to
prevailed on all of those issues. There were no due process violations found. I think we prevailed on demurrer, as a matter of fact, at an early stage in the proceeding. So there was no, the only ruling against the city in this matter was very narrow. It was in regards just to the zoning administrator's interpretation. The judge felt that had exceeded the zoning administrator's authority under those circumstances. Not necessarily that the logic was wrong, that it just exceeded her authority, Ms. Wyatt, to issue that. We prevailed on due process grounds. In this matter, if we have an ordinance, it would go through CPC, and all the requirements or all the safeguards for public participation that are in the municipal code would be presumably followed. There would be no issue with that.
Has the city attorney and planning department met to develop a strategy?
There's been brief conversations, but I believe the fixes can pretty much track what's been done in the 53.00. It would probably only take a phrase to get it done. Planning might want to do more or have a slightly different take, but I think that they're of the same mind.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
And just a quick question. The definition between pet shop versus kennel. I think I got it, but you want to say that one more time? Explain that?
Yeah, it's confusing, and it was hard to write. I hope the report was as clear as it could be, because there's different definitions throughout different parts of the code. You basically have the zoning code, and then you have the animal regulations, which are in 53.00, and the zoning code's the 12 series, 12.0 et sec. And so you have a definition of kennels in the animal regulations that was 53.00, and it defined kennel, dog kennel, and cat kennel. And it had a broad definition for each. So when we passed that ordinance 182816, we just said it kept the same definition for each type of kennel and for kennels generally, but added on with the exception of a pet shop or a pet store. So that's one set of definitions of kennels in 53.00. The other definition of kennel that remains is in 12.03 in the zoning code. And that one basically doesn't reference cats. It's not general. It's specific to dogs for some reason. It just says any place where 4 or more adult dogs are kept or maintained is a kennel, which is why we had the ZAI issued in the first place. We didn't feel that it was intending to be so narrow to not allow pet shops to have adult animals for sale. It's a very broad definition. So the legislative fix that we're looking at here would fix 12.03, which is just the definition of kennel in the zoning code that only pertains to dogs.
Okay.
I don't know why it doesn't say dogs and cats or all animals, but it just says dogs.
So any pet shop that has more than 4 animals is considered a kennel?
No, for the animal regulations, prior to the ordinance, any pet shop that had 4 or more adult cats or dogs might need a kennel permit because it would meet the definition. That's no longer the case because the definition of kennel there in the animal reg says with the exclusion of a pet shop. So we're good there. In the zoning code, any pet store that keeps 4 or more adult dogs
is considered a kennel.
Could fall within the definition of kennel, yes,
And
technically.
But it's not?
The city doesn't think so.
Okay. So that's what we're correcting today?
Correct.
Okay.
We don't think that was the intention of the zoning code.
Because if it's considered a kennel, it could only be in an industrial zone versus a pet shop that could be in a commercial zone.
That's correct. It creates zoning issues because pet stores are by right in commercial zones, but if it's a kennel, then it's only by right in an industrial zone.
So it's going to fix that to allow 4 or more adult dogs for a pet shop to be in a commercial zone.
Correct, so that Petco doesn't have to be by the train tracks.
Yeah. So is this going to be is this enough of a fix for because there's multiple definitions and
one fix is in that it was like I said, Ms. Dougherty challenged the ordinance that fixed the animal regulations, and that was she did not prevail on that. So that ordinance is effective, and we're good to go there. That we just need to fix that one issue in the zoning code, which is the definition of kennels in 12.03, which is incredibly broad.
Okay.
And I know there are some other cities that abut us, like Glendale and Culver City, that already allow this. Have they had any kinds of problems at all that we're aware of?
I'm unaware of any problems of that nature in other cities.
And I see we have our GM of Animal Services here. Ms. Barnett, I wonder if you could come up and just tag on to this and let us know if there's anything else we're missing or if you're confident that this new ordinance will solve all our legal issues in moving forward.
How could I contradict the city attorney's office? No, excuse me, I do think this works. And the one clarification is that adult is 4 months and older. I think that's what's been is a little bit confusing. If the pet is under 4 months, it's not really eligible to be registered until you can have more than the number. And that's what they're correcting.
And I think you can't spay and neuter them.
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't release them because we require that they be spayed and neutered.
Well, we do that at 2 pounds or 8 weeks.
Okay.
Oh, wait, well, so one thing, on the zoning side, it's only for dogs, not cats.
Right, and dogs 4 months or older. So if you had presumably 3 or less, there wouldn't be a problem.
So
they were all puppies.
No action needs to be taken that relates to cats on that particular.
I don't believe so. Just adding that one clause with the exception of a pet shop or a pet store would resolve the issue.
I think that was part of the issue is that dogs and cats are handled differently in the code.
We have 3 speakers from the public also. If we could start with Elizabeth Orrick.
And Ms. Orrick is a constituent of mine as well in Sherman Oaks.
Yes, full disclosure.
Good seeing you.
Used to be a constituent of Mr. Kratz.
Yeah, sorry we lost you.
Redrew the lines, damn it. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Orrick. I'm the National Manager of Puppy Mill Initiatives for Best Friends Animal Society, and we are in full support of amending this kennel definition. So I am a proud third-generation native and resident of this city, CD4, and I'm so proud that LA has made so much progress in reducing the number of animals being killed in our shelters. A lot of that has to do with Best Friends' commitment to helping take the city no-kill, but there's also no question that some of that progress has to do with fewer animals entering the shelters and more animals being adopted out due to the 2012 retail pet sales ordinance. We are on track to reach no-kill, but there are no guarantees that we can get there if we don't allow groups who are working so tirelessly to help animals get out of our shelters and into viable retail settings where they have a better chance of finding homes. It is in the best interest of this city, which has committed to the welfare of our animals and to our residents, to do what we can to reduce the red tape by lifting that kennel glitch, that kennel zoning glitch, and adding the exemption for pet stores. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Phyllis Doherty, be followed by Dan.
Good morning, Phyllis Doherty. I'm the Director of Animal Issues Movement, but I also have been rescuing animals since Ms. Orrick probably was in diapers. There was no dispute as to the difference between adult dogs and pets that were in pet shops, which were puppies and kittens. You are newly elected. I've heard you both speak before you were elected and since. You're there for your communities. You promised to consider them. What this will do is allow anyone, there are no requirements to be a rescuer. You can become a rescuer right now by just saying, I'm a rescuer. You can then collect money from Best Friends if you join No Kill LA for each animal that you take out of the shelter more than the year before, and you can charge donations and sell pets. That doesn't require any special skill, any background checks, nothing. There are very, very good rescuers, the majority of them are. However, this would allow anyone, including people that breed their own animals to bring in, to open a store next door to any of your constituents. Both districts are, the lifeline of both of your districts are small businesses. I could come in with up to 100 pit bulls, because pit bulls are the largest number of animals that are not adopted, and put them next door to a business in any area in your district. It would also be within 500 feet of residences and apartment buildings. There is no restriction on sanitation, on noise, on odor. All of that is gone. No one has to stay in the location overnight in the event of fire, because you can't sleep in a C2 zone. What if there's a fire like we had the other day? This will absolutely destroy the businesses, the integrity of the city. Waive the fees for CUPs for rescues. Let them go through the process. No city has approved this.
Thank you, Mr. Gus.
Good morning. Daniel Gus, let me show you how your kennel law is utterly irrelevant, and it might be deadly. I'm going to read from an Animal Services report dated July 15th, 2014, and I'm quoting one of your senior officers about a property on Tobias Avenue in Van Nuys. Listen closely, because this could be deadly. The officer writes, property owner called to report that a tenant has 16 to 17 large dogs, Mastiff-type dogs at this address. He hides the dogs anytime the city gives him a 24-hour notice for inspection. This is July of 2014. And why is it that this person hasn't been raided in 2 years? He clearly violates the kennel guidelines. Ms. Barnett knows about it because the officer who was assigned to it is rumored to be doing a quid pro quo exchange of sexual favors in exchange for not enforcing hoarding laws and your kennel laws. Ms. Barnett, call her up and ask her, gee, did you transfer this officer out of this district? And did that officer order another officer not to raid? So I guess the question is, how can you have knowledge of 16 to 17 Mastiff-type dogs on a property in Van Nuys and You let this person schedule inspections?
This is off topic, council member.
I'm talking about the ways that the kennel rules are being circumvented.
Personnel matters is, animal services is not part of the agenda.
The kennel, I'm speaking only about how kennel rules can be circumvented, and it's irrelevant.
I think it is irrelevant. You're off topic. Why don't you try to get back to the topic?
Okay. That when the benefit of your kennel rules are only if people care to follow them. You can have all of the guidelines and restrictions and definitions that you want to, but if people don't want to follow them, there's proof that they won't follow them.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? If not, I would ask that we approve the city attorney's recommendation and instruct the planning department with the assistance of the city attorney to prepare and present an ordinance to amend section 12.03 of the LA Municipal Code to exclude pet shops from the definition of kennel. Without objection, that will be so ordered. Item number 8.
Item number 8, motion, Rue Krikorian, relative to instructing the Department of Animal Services to compile data on the number of animals surrendered at each of the city's animal shelters within the past 5 years and analyze said data and report in regard to findings and recommendations for addressing the growing influx of animal surrenders.
Actually, I'm going to apologize, and I did not realize I had cards for an item that we had under consent. Item number 7, so if we could briefly have speakers speak to those. Item number 7, beginning with Phyllis Doherty. And if we could ask that we do this 1 minute per speaker, followed by Yvette Burke.
I want to tell you what the puppy mill law really did. It abdicated all the responsibility of the city of Los Angeles to take care of animals that are sold from puppy mills. It didn't change the fact that people are doing it, as Carol Raphael Davis, who was one of the greatest supporters of it, came in and said to the commission, they're now buying them over the internet. So what we did was take away the middleman. We made it much easier, and we also lost 94 sections of the Lockyer-Polanco law, which Mr. Koretz helped pass, to make sure that if you went into a pet shop and an animal were ill, if there was the slightest problem, you could close that pet shop, put it in the newspaper, and really made an impact on why people shouldn't buy purebred animals from puppy mills. But instead, we closed up 11 small businesses in the city, and now all they do is put up pictures and give you the number to order them on the internet. Not all of these bills work out as the way you think they do.
Yvette Burke, to be followed by Deborah Regal.
I'm Yvette Burke with Valley Cats, Inc., and kind of fell between both 6 and 7, so we put it into 7. Kind of an update as to where we stand. Valley Cats, Inc. was running a premier cat adoption center at Westfield Promenade. As of November 30th, we had to shut down because Westfield is closing the mall. After 3 years of successfully adopting out healthy, clean animals in a cage-free facility, we are now being courted by other communities to come in because the City of Los Angeles roadblocks about zoning put our rescue operation in jeopardy. We are unable to find a location that is safe and clean for our volunteers. As such, we are looking outside the City of Los Angeles and outside even the County of Los Angeles. And it is heartbreaking because we are, excuse me, I get choked up. We are an asset to animal services. We pull those animals so they're not euthanized.
And we hope that with our change in zoning, that problem will be rectified, perhaps not timely enough for your organization, but to solve that problem in the future. Elizabeth Orrick.
Thank you. Again, my name is Elizabeth Orrick, Best Friends Animal Society. So I worked with the city on the original ordinance that was enacted in 2012, and at the time, because it was the first major city to do this, we included the sunset clause to offset the fact that LA was setting a major precedent by enacting this reasonable and effective measure to address the puppy mill problem as it relates to our city. More than 85 communities, cities, towns, counties have followed LA's lead since. However, not one has included a sunset clause in their language. Even Beverly Hills, which just recently adopted all of LA's animal code, including the ordinance, opted not to include the sunset clause. This ordinance needs to stay in effect in order to prevent a flood of inhumanely and irresponsibly bred animals from inhumane pet mills from coming back into the community. And that is what will happen as more of these surrounding communities pass this ordinance. Mill-supplied pet stores are going to start looking back at LA to open their doors. It doesn't make sense to go backwards, especially after all this time and all the other communities that we have helped lead in the right direction. So let's stay on the right path because it's working. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, if there are no other comments, we will approve the motion to request the city attorney to draft the ordinance for council's consideration to remove the sunset clause. Without objection, that will be so ordered. And now, item number 8. Welcome again, Ms. Barnett.
Okay, so I'm Brenda Barnett, General Manager, LA Animal Services, and I'm just here to respond to questions for Councilmember Rue's motion. I have supplied your staff with some of the numbers from the shelters for dogs, cats, and rabbits, also with the primary reasons that they're being surrendered to the shelter based on what the people tell us at the time that they own or surrender their pet.
Mr. Rue, would you like to speak to your item a little bit?
Yes. So can you provide the breakdown of the numbers and reasons for surrenders at each of the city's animal shelters?
Well, yes. There are. Well, we did this numerical report, and we did the owner surrenders, and we broke it down per shelter separately for cats, dogs, and rabbits. Then we totaled the reasons for owner surrenders to see how much in depth you want to go to. But if we look at the primary reason that people give for turning any companion animal in is no time for that pet. The second largest number is because they're moving, and the third is about landlord issues, and the fourth being that they have too many. Now, this could mean that they think they have too many, or it could mean that one of our officers has been out and notified them that they have too many. Then the next one is cost for medical services, and then some of them bring us animals when they are deceased, so that is the next category, or died. So, you get it's a big drop between the number that are turned in because they've died and the next category, which is aggressive animal. So then the numbers get pretty small from there on down. So we gave you the top reasons on that report.
Could you speak to any of the services provided by the nonprofits co-located at our animal shelters to reduce the number of shelters? I mean, the surrenders.
Yeah, that eventually will reduce the number of shelters if we don't have animals. We're blessed to have 3 very strong nonprofits who have what they're calling intervention programs at our largest shelters. The first one started at South LA, and it was an idea that has been supported broadly in the community. It was headed up by Lori Weiss from Downtown Dogs, and she does an incredible job. And of course, typical to Lori's generosity, she's also helped other groups set up similar programs at North Central Shelter and another one at East Valley. I have heard that there's interest in doing intervention programs at some of the other shelters. And what these volunteers do is they greet people when they come in, and they sort of take their pulse, if you will. They say, are you surrendering an animal because you really need to and because you really want to, in which case they should be admitted to the shelter. They should come to the shelter, and we should provide them what they need. Sometimes people come to the shelter out of desperation. Their animal may be sick. They may be having an issue with the landlord. They may just not know what else to do. They may not be able to afford to take care of the animal. So in those cases, the intervention program, people will talk to them, and if they want to keep the animal, they'll see if it's reasonable to help them. Sometimes that means going out and helping them fix a fence because the dog has been getting out too many times. Sometimes it means that they couldn't afford the spay-neuter, so they need to be given information about our vouchers so they can get a free spay-neuter. I mean, it can be also medical help if the animal has some kind of a medical condition that the person can't afford to pay for. I mean, there are any number of reasons, but these groups are very good. They work sometimes with social services to help people who need a variety of different kinds of help.
What's the average cost, irrespective of the animal's age or health, for individual animals surrendered at our shelters?
Well, those are numbers that are actually undergoing review right now. We're trying to look at all of the fees that are related to the Department of Animal Services and come up with something that we will bring back to the Commission and to this committee and to City Council to look at, because I think those fees, like many things, there's something that's being routed through the system now about raising the fees on the vouchers, because a lot of the veterinarians are reporting they would be able to do more, help us more, if there was a little bit of a bump in that price. And we haven't readjusted those prices, I think, for about 15 years. We're doing a similar look at all the fees in the department. On the top of my head, I really can't tell you what we figure the average cost. By the time they come in and have the veterinary check and the daily care and all, I don't have a number on the top of my head, but I can get you what we think it is today, and then we'll be working on making sure that that's correct. We definitely underwrite adoptions.
Okay. And, piggybacking on that, the third highest reason for surrenders was the landlord. And I believe, Councilman Koretz, you introduced a motion on that a while back.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And then the fifth reason, after too many, close fifth is the cost of medicine and medical care. And I introduced a motion a while back to asking for a report back. I think you guys are working on it still, on the fee structure and to speak of effectiveness of reduced fee for low-income individuals. Would something like that be effective?
Well, I don't think
I
don't think I can give you a yes or no, because I don't think we've finished looking at it. But one of the things that we do know is that the intervention groups are paying a large percentage of their donated income to try to help people redeem their dogs who have gotten loose and been picked up and are in the shelter. So I think that there are some redemption fees that we need to take a look at and how we do that. On the one hand, we don't want to have redemption fees so high that someone can't get their dog out. On the other hand, we don't want a chronic offender. So I think we'll have to look at how many times do you get a get out of jail free card.
And in that report, I'm sure you're going to include the nonprofits and what they're...
Yes. The commission actually just did approve a $40,000 grant, that we're working with the finance department to make sure that we can figure out how to repay them for some of these fees that they expend on behalf of their clients.
I can't remember when that report was due. Can you recall the one we're just talking about?
I can't. Yeah. But we'll look into it. We talked about it in a leadership meeting with our team on Monday, and to try to see where we are, because there are different people working on different parts of that report, because the fees are in different divisions.
No, I'm looking forward to that, but I don't want to rush it. But it's because I was thinking, Mr. Chair, with your consent, I'd be interested if we could have a more slightly comprehensive report in 30 days, or actually it could be in conjunction with the report that we're just talking about, because I want to see if I could ask the department if you could outline efforts partnering, but not limited to just that, but partnering with local nonprofits to try to reduce the number of surrenders. I mean, in conjunction with the fee waivers, or just because it's growing. And
Sure. Maybe we can even ask the nonprofits who do that to add something to our report and to be here that day so that you can talk to them directly.
30 days, 60 days, what do you?
I think 30 is fine.
30 is fine, okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think this is a great idea, and I appreciate your motion, because there's so many pieces of how to attack the fact that we have too many animals in our shelters and trying to get to no kill. And clearly one of them is surrender. And it means a lot to me directly, because when I was 8 years old, we had cats, and we moved to a home with a dog that ran around the backyard, a duplex, and my parents surrendered our cats. And had there been someone there to try and avoid that, they might have said, "You idiot, keep your cats indoors." And if they agreed to do that, that would have been problem solved, instead of an owner turn in, which presumably meant they were immediately euthanized, because back then we didn't have a hold program.
Well, this is, and to Lori Weiss's credit, this is another sort of first thing that's happening in Los Angeles, because when I go to conferences and talk about these intervention programs, people are just sort of wowed by the whole idea. They're like, whoa, we never thought about that. And it was just a matter of saying yes, trusting Lori and saying yes, and then she made it happen.
And I think looking at how we could do it better, how we could expand it more broadly, I think all those are great things. Now we have some speakers from the public. First, Paul Dorigo, to be followed by Daniel Gus.
It's 2 minutes, right?
Yes. Well, 2 minutes for this one is fine.
Good morning. Paul Dorigo with Chula, Citizens for Humane Los Angeles. By the way, Councilman Ryu, would you please ask them to make a distinction between owner returns and owner surrenders? We have to know why, if we're misplacing owners, pets with people right in the beginning of the process, we can correct that immediately right there and see, hey, we may need to make an adjustment. If you notice the graphs I've given you, they were done by Dr. Sue Mattson. I'm not a statistician, so I had to ask her what this all means, all these numbers of stats. And live release rate is a metric. That's all it is. It is not a measure of performance of how our shelter does. Are your constituents coming to you and saying, what a great job they're doing? Are they? No, probably, yeah. I know you. I know you're on the street too, and I know you're doing work on the street, so you're really seeing what's going on.
And we don't answer questions; we just listen to you.
Yeah. But I just want to make the distinction of understanding what statistics mean. You can prove anything with statistics, but this is not, live release is not a metric for how the department performs. We still have rampant strays, and you have to understand the driver of the decrease, or actually the increase of live release, is because a decrease of intake. Why is that happening? Well, there's a good question. But we definitely know there's a ton of strays on the streets of Los Angeles. We get tons of reports. We pick them up. Rescues pick them up. And we really need to address that. Because if you look at the last page that I gave you of a quote from Ms. Barnett from our responses to the allegations, page 4, her motives are to make sure that live release rate goes up, leaving the strays on the streets. So that is not a viable way to serve our community. Well, we know that that's not her intentions, because it's going to mess up the metrics and it doesn't make the department look as good. But we have to focus on how does that department perform for its staff, for its volunteers, for the community, and how it delivers its performance. And you can, again, keep that information. The whole report was done on live release. Again, it's an example of be careful of metrics, and let's work on pragmatically how the department performs. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Gus, to be followed by Beatrice Simpson.
So, council members, Daniel Gus, asking Animal Services to look at its records. I mean, my goodness. Here's an email from Rita Moreno, the commission assistant, who says that the Englander family doesn't have any dogs, and we know that's not true. So garbage in, garbage out with your request for the city to go over its records. Here it is, the commission. Mitch Englander and Jane Englander, no animals, unless the animals are registered in their daughter's names.
Mr. Peretz, again.
I'm showing
We're
that
talking
the
about
status of
surrenders.
Mr.
This has nothing to do with surrender.
I'm showing that the records that you're requesting are garbage, okay? So here's something you may want to look at. The animals who are pulled out by the Best Friends organization, for some reason, are not microchipped. The story is that they're not microchipped because they want to use their own microchips. But the problem is, if those animals come back into the shelter without microchips, how do you know that they weren't coming back from the shelter in the first place? So the question you want to look at is, why are the animals being pulled by Best Friends not microchipped? They all have to be microchipped. And that would be a way of tracking if the animals are coming back in that are not being adopted. They're just coming back into the system. Here's an example. I'm giving you examples of animals that are coming back in. Best Friends, which pulls a lot of animals, here's their tax return. They pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to a few local rescue groups whose records are not tracked. Here's a text message from Laurel Kinder of Kinder for Animal Care saying she pulled 933 animals in 2013. I guess the question is, why doesn't the city know what became of those animals? Because a cynic could say, gee, the Best Friends animals aren't chipped. They pay Kinder for Animals hundreds of thousands of dollars. They don't ask her what became of the animals, and they're coming back into the system. You don't even know what you don't know.
Beatrice Simpson, to be followed by Phyllis Doherty.
Good morning. In the 1970s, the humane community sought to end pound seizure, which is the selling or giving pound animals to laboratories for experiments. That is what happened to many animals whose families failed to find them or for whatever reason were in the shelter. As bad as their lives had been, going to a laboratory was the beginning of an unspeakable suffering. The fight was long, as those with vested interest in a cheap source of animals hammered the local and state officials. But in 1981, in April, Mayor Tom Bradley urged the council to repeal the section of the law allowing pound seizure. And in June of 1981, the council voted yes. At the same time, our society was killing shelter animals in decompression chambers. They were stuffed in the chamber and decompressed with painful deaths. Some survived, only to go through it again. Descriptions of this are hard to read even these many years later. The chambers were banned in 1978. Now animals are given an injection in the arms of caring workers. All this is to remind us that these changes would not have happened without the humane community. They did the research, they showed the evidence, they shamed society's lack of interest. Changes are seldom made from the top down. Those of us who were around back in those dark days and the people who came after urge you to welcome the work of the humane community. Without the many rescue groups, the numbers of animals killed would be far higher and the morale of the employees far lower. Please listen to the Citizens for Humane Los Angeles and other good people and help make the changes to benefit both the animals and the employees at the shelters. Thank you.
Thank you. Phyllis Doherty, to be followed by Jacqueline Wichnow, who I believe is our last speaker.
Phyllis Doherty. You're addressing this from the symptom, not from the cause, Mr. Rue, and I realize it's well intended. However, one of the only categories that does not have to sign up for a tax permit with the City of LA is animal breeders. They're obviously and very, very specifically eliminated. It'd be a very easy thing to put them on there, then we'd know where they are. So we've done all of this work to make sure that we don't have any puppy mills, puppies coming in. We don't have puppy mills in the City of LA, but we have done nothing about breeders. That's an easy way to start. Require them to get a tax permit like everybody else. A bingo operator has to have a tax permit. But you can breed thousands of animals. Go on the internet. You'll find out why we have all these animals and why many of them are being relinquished. And in regard to the categories that you have there, landlords are much more likely to allow animals when it's not rent-controlled properties. Rent control indicates that people can't afford to pay their rent. We want to give them more animals. But the main thing is that we can't regulate. If they are violating, if they are harming the animal, that's what the biggest problem I have had. We cannot do anything about it. I've seen many animals die that way. I don't want to see that. They don't give them vet care, because vet care is the cost. The cost is not getting them out of the shelter. The cost, it's $200 when you go to a veterinarian for just plain shots and basic care for an animal now. We're giving them away free. We're not indicating to people it's going to cost to care for this animal. The animal gets sick, they don't take it to the vet, and it comes back into the shelter because they can't afford it. You can put all of this on the landlords, on anybody you want to. The basic thing is we're doing nothing about breeding. And until the city starts actually going after the people who are making money on breeding, you're going to have people come bring animals back into the shelter.
Thank you. Jacqueline Wishnow.
Hello. This is my first time speaking today. I just wanted to come and let you guys know kind of my experience working in Los Angeles for the past 7 years and the rampant amount of stray, unneutered animals that I've seen and personally tried to pick up off the street. It is heartbreaking. It is costly. It's not just people that I work with. It's people in the entire community of the garment industry, salespeople that are constantly driving in their cars that are almost hitting dogs in the street. If we're lucky enough to even get them, they are never microchipped and never spayed or neutered. And it just seems like such a simple idea that if spay-neuter was enforced, that this problem wouldn't be an issue anymore. And to Paul's point, I do believe that that the reason that there probably aren't as many intakes is because people are ignoring the spays on the street. And these stray animals they're just multiplying. And it's not just dogs, it's cats. There are cat colonies in the downtown LA area. I've driven by several of them whenever I've approached anybody in the area.
On topic on the motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
She's talking about suggestions.
I'm just feeling like strays in general aren't being addressed, and the animals are multiplying, and it just seems like such a simple solution to go in and actually implement spay neuter laws.
Thank you. We can't find the card, but I understand Debbie Regal has put in a card on item 8. So if you'd like to speak, that would be great.
Hi, thanks again. Number one, I'm so glad we're at this point where we're discussing the issues as they are, the difference between dogs and cats. I would like to address the issue that maybe anybody who wants to be a rescuer can, but those that are not fit or qualified, they fall away quickly, which leaves the better rescue groups to do what they're supposed to do. I like to think of my rescue group as intervention. We talk many people into keeping their animals, preventing them from going to the shelters. We do everything we can as a smaller form of the larger shelter. The good ones do this. And so I appreciate the time you're giving to this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rue, would you like to restate your motion in terms of time and what you added on in an amendment?
Sure. A more comprehensive report in 30 days that also outlines the efforts the department can take to partner with nonprofits, as well as maybe integrate the previous motion about the fee structures to reduce, or anything else, to reduce the number of surrenders at the respective shelters.
And did you want to include looking at whether there's more we could do to subsidize veterinary care?
Yes, that's where the not limited to part goes in. So and I think the general manager spoke of other ideas as well. So a whole comprehensive. And I think if she brings other nonprofit providers with her for the presentation, that's great too.
Great. So we will ask that that come back in 30 days to committee without objection. Now we have one general comment from Mr. Dan Gus.
General comment. Okay. Council members. You don't know what you don't know. If you look for bad information, let me give you an example of how this little postcard, how the city, this is the key to millions of dollars of revenue you're missing out on annually. This is the card that the city sends out, if it has a plan, to people who it believes have dogs who are licensed. Do you know how to stop getting these? 1 year. Just don't respond to it. The city has no follow-up. Every time somebody just ignores this licensing notice, all you have to do is ignore it, and you will never get another letter from the city. And for every year that the animal lives, the city misses out on revenue. Now, it's a wonder why the county serves a smaller population, but the city gets a third of the licensing revenue that the county does. Here's another thing that I brought to Ms. Barnett's attention. Look at the card. Does it say what dog or what license? Where's the information on the dog who's supposed to be licensed? It doesn't say the dog's name. It doesn't say the dog's license number. It's only in English. I have a last name that could possibly sound Spanish. So what's the point of this? This little piece of paper is the key to millions and millions of dollars of licensing revenue that you lose every year. That revenue can be put to spay-neuter that you desperately need in South LA and East Los Angeles. But you guys never engage on that stuff. There's tons of stuff. By the way, Mr. Galperin, he knows about this. He didn't audit it. I brought you a visual today to say these are all of the problems at Animal Services. These are all of the problems at Animal Services today. Do you want to know what Mr. Galperin audited? This little coin, this little outlier over here. Until you do a comprehensive external audit, you're never going to solve any of these problems, ever. A comprehensive external audit is the only first step. Thank you.
Thank you. One last speaker, Paul Dorigo.
I'm gathering my prop.
You can leave him behind as a contribution. We'll take
The city needs it.
We need it.
Good sense of humor.
Good morning. Paul Dorigo with Chula. A couple different things on topic of performance. And something called interested parties is a tag that goes on an animal when it comes into the shelter. Those people who put an interested party or an IP on a dog or cat are supposed to be called when it's time for euthanasia or when it's time for the animals available for adoption. The department doesn't make those calls. That doesn't make sense. The department has somebody who's interested in the animal, but they won't call them. And the answer is, well, we don't have resources. Well, the truth is, Chameleon Software could email those people and say, hey, this animal's available. These are little examples. That's one example of the many. The outside audit is something that we've requested with the mayor. We think it's imperative that we have another source to look at it and define what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and what makes us work from mediocre to world class. You're not going to get there, again, by using the same people, the same thinking. We need to look outside that box. I think Dan puts it right, though, even though he has a very colorful way of expressing things, but the points are still valid. Is it pragmatic? Really, are we performing the way we could? And Chula is here we do investigations, as you know. We've brought plenty of issues forward. They're all documented with interviews, with photographs. There was a photograph of a dog that was starving down at 7906 Avalon Boulevard. The dog owner was only given a citation. The dog is still starving. So it doesn't make sense. It seems like our animal control officers also are missing some training to go out and be more proactive. They should be able to, that person should have been cited. It's a felony. According to the code, it's a felony. So we need to be more proactive on these types of issues so that we can make a difference. And spay and neuter is not the only answer. We need more community outreach. Please show me the programs you're going to the schools with. Please show me the programs that you're going into communities that need it. I don't see any. But if you could show it to me, please show them to me. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. With no other items on our agenda, we are adjourned.